going to repeat that one more time. There's a perception, as I talk to administrators, they say, well, geez, it's too focused. Well, it's not inclusive enough. Well, geez, we really need to serve all of our students. Title V is designed, yes, to support Hispanic students, but there's so many different ways you can do to accomplish that. You can build capacity and infrastructure within your institution in order to accomplish that, but by doing that, you have the opportunity to serve your broader base of students. And so those are the two broad misperceptions. And bottom line, the Title V is much more than serving Hispanic students. Title V is a capacity-building grant, building capacity and infrastructure as a way of ultimately serving your Hispanic students, but in the process, really serving all students. And so I want to highlight another part of the federal guidelines. It's interesting, as I talk to administrators or faculty across the country, oftentimes they highlight the previous slide, and sometimes it seems like they don't read the second slide of the federal guidelines for Title V grants. It says to expand and enhance their, meaning HSIs and cooperating or partnering institutions, to expand and enhance their academic offerings, program quality, and institutional sustainability or stability. Folks, more and more institutions are reading this and realizing, gosh, we have an incredible opportunity to leverage these financial dollars to enhance our entire institution. And that more and more are taking advantage of it. In fact, I want to share with you a couple of ways in which institutions are now leveraging these dollars to better their institutions and serve all of their students, and at the same time, their Latino students who at their schools or at their partner institutions. Let's look at this. Use of Title V funds. Scientific equipment for teaching. How many institutions, or maybe we have some science folks from the science departments here, could use the expansion or development of wet laboratories or dry laboratories? Construction of institutional facilities. I can't think of one institution in this entire country that couldn't use more resources, maybe not to build entire building, which you can, but for renovation needs. These resources can be used for that. Faculty development. GSU and Morton College have fully taken advantage for professional development and growth of their faculty. The purchase of educational materials, more technological software, or software and technology uses. Endowment funds. A lot of administrators don't realize Title V funds can actually be leveraged for scholarships. I was part of a grant that set aside $500,000. The federal government set aside $500,000 for the institution then to match over 5 years for the production of scholarships. Funds for administrative management. We all need additional human resources to support the work that we're doing. Some other uses, distance learning in academic instruction, whether it's Blackboard or web development. Teacher education is supported quite a bit through Title V. And then a variety of retention and academic support services, student support services, academic tutoring, counseling, even shared use of facilities in the event that you want to lease and do these things. And so there are many, many opportunities with Title V, and one of the core messages that I want to share with particularly the faculty and the staff and the administrators who are contemplating whether or not to renew a grant or to explore the development of Title V grant, I encourage you to do it. Unless you can say you have enough resources for everything you're doing, these grants really should be explored and leveraged to support not just the academic mission of the institution, but to support the future success of our students. I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means and really why this conversation about Title V and these funds is so important for GSU and Morton College. I believe that both of these schools, and really all the schools, colleges and universities throughout the state, have a strategic opportunity to improve their position among higher education institutions within the state of Illinois and nationally. And there's a couple of reasons why. If we look at the future of the workforce in Illinois, and this was actually taken out of, it was an NCHM's presentation, the National Center for Higher Education Management Systems actually presented to the Illinois Board of Higher Education a few years ago. And they had a couple conclusions. They said the working age population growth is likely to be small in Illinois and up primarily among Hispanics and Latinos. Now what they say is that an adequate workforce will depend on two core concepts: participation of those not in the workplace, primarily including younger and older people, which we know the younger population in Illinois, the fastest growing is the Latino population. But then the second one is core, improved educational pipeline results. That is really where not just K-12, but post-secondary education institutions can leverage their position not just for the Title V funds, but to better support the economic growth and future and development of the state of Illinois. I'm going to share with you a little bit of the evidence that I found through some of these national reports. This is from the U.S. Census Bureau. What you find here is that Illinois, between 2000 and 2020, is only going to grow about 2%. The projections of working age populations, 18 to 64, only about 2%. You're lucky if you're not in the red, because the red, you're actually declining in enrollment. But Illinois' working population growth will likely be small. High-growth states are really in the west and in the south. It's interesting, if you look at the south, southern states, Latinos are growing exponentially. The 1990 to 2000 census report showed states like Georgia growing 300% in Latinos, North Carolina growing 400%, Tennessee growing 200%, South Carolina growing 250% in the last census. All over the South is growing. In fact, I have a brother who's an assistant principal out by Beaufort, South Carolina. It's by Hilton Head. His middle school in Hilton Head, South Carolina, is 30% Latino, virtually all Mexicano. And so the entire nation's changing, but Illinois really isn't a whole lot here. We're also seeing this trend in terms of the growth of the general breakdown of the ethnic population. As I mentioned earlier, the Hispanic Latino population, a little bit lower. I think this has a button here. Right here is actually going to grow between that time period, 2000 to 2020, 61%. And so while the state isn't growing, we see huge populations of Latinos growing, which once again makes the case of why higher education institutions should be looking at Title V grants, whether they're an HSI or not, or want to be an HSI, to leverage in support of these changing demographics. We're also seeing this trend among the high school population, not surprisingly. The changing demographics of Illinois, high school graduates, so the students who are perfect for the recruitment of schools like GSU and Morton College, that population is growing primarily among Latinos and other minorities. And it's this pipeline topic that I want to talk just briefly about. You know, a lot of folks will say the educational pipeline in America has cracks or holes in it. I would argue that the educational pipeline, in particular for Latinos, is hemorrhaging right now. The Hispanic Scholarship Fund came out with some data not too long ago, and they showed that out of 100 Latino kindergartners, 44 would graduate from high school. Of those 44, 20 would stop their education right there. So 24 out of the original 100 Latino kindergartners will go on to some form of post-secondary education, a college or university. Of those 24, 13 would go to a community college. 11 would go to a four-year institution. Of those 11 that go to a four-year institution, 8 will become a junior and 6 will graduate. 2 will go on to some form of a master's or Ph.D. program.